All right, so the other morning I woke up and I chose violence. Now, why did I choose violence? I'm talking specifically about this post right here. And the reason that I made this post was because I was at a level 1 and I had a girl come up to me saying that she was wondering if she could get some help. It was at the end of day 1 and she said, hey, I'm going to this gym and every time I train on the Monday session, I'm too tired to come in on Tuesday and Wednesday. And so she's like, can you help me? And I said, sure. What's going on? And she just basically explained that. I train Monday, I can't come in Tuesday, Wednesday because I'm too tired. I'm like, okay, well, first off, like, how do you sleep? How well are you sleeping? She's like, I sleep pretty well, 8 to 9 hours a night. And I was like, that is pretty well. Good job. That's much more sleep than I get. So I was like, okay, well, what about your nutrition? How's your nutrition going? She's like, well, my nutrition is pretty good. I just got a nutrition coach about 2 months ago, and that's helped a bit. We tried to up my protein. I've got a decent amount of protein. We've got balancing real foods off of the other things. And I'm like, wow, that's on point, more so than most people. And then I was just like, you know, what is the type of training that you do at that gym? Because that was my third thing that I was going to look at. And she was like, well, we do CrossFit, you know, like she started this gym over in like Denmark or something, where some games I don't know if it was Denmark, it was another country, and there was a couple games competitors who were the coaches there. And she's like, I was so lucky to start there. They were great and they set my foundation, but I recently moved to the Bay Area and I'm training at this other gym. And I was like, okay, well, what program do they run? She's like, well, they run CrossFit every single day. We come in, we warm up, we do a lift, and then we go into some sort of Metcon a little bit later. And I was like, well, that's not truly the only way to do it, and that's definitely not how CrossFit was originally intended. I mean, if you look at CrossFit.com, that's never been the case. And her mind was blown. Like, she hadn't even thought of a concept, and she'd been to like 5 gyms, and she had no idea that you could just do one thing a day. Like, that was a concept that was completely foreign to her. Now, for her, I reckon that she was going too hard in both of the things that she was doing. And so I recommended, if she's not going to have a single focus for her workout days, I said, well, take one of the things and make it extra easy for yourself. So like when they do a lift in front of another workout that's later in that, then do that lift extra light. Just use a barbell, just use a PVC, and just say, hey, I'm just moving through the technique on this day. And then really go after the metabolic conditioning workout. And then on other days, maybe take that strength portion of it and go harder, go heavier when you're feeling it. And then on the metabolic conditioning portion of it, pull things way back so that way you're not going that hard. Use almost as just going through the motions. I also told her to stay consistent and keep with the sleeping and let her know that, CrossFit is one of those things where you have to do it a few times in a row for you to really get back into the rhythm. But the main thing about this story that really threw me off was her fundamental concept for CrossFit. Like, the only way it had ever been done and the only way she knows it to exist is doing a heavy lift and then doing some sort of metabolic conditioning workout afterwards. Of course, heavy is always relative, and the time frames on those metabolic conditioning things could always change. And it's just heartbreaking to look at that and have people get the idea that that is CrossFit. Now, I want to point out that can you do 2 things in the same day and have it be awesome and have it be CrossFit? Absolutely. But if you do 2 things, specifically a barbell lift and then a metabolic conditioning workout every day, then you are over-biasing your program. There's no variance there. Maybe there's variance amongst the lifts that you're doing, and there's variance amongst the metabolic conditioning workouts that you're doing, but there's only an hour class. So these metabolic conditioning workouts are always gonna be shorter. They're gonna be shorter to medium range. They're never gonna be super long. They're probably often, because people can't go too hard after they lift, never gonna be that short because or intense because people are gonna be tired from the lift. And if you're exposing someone to a barbell lift every day, they're over-biasing towards barbell lifts. That in and of itself isn't variance, even if you change what the lift is every day. Now, there are ways to do this 2-portion day better, and it's far more difficult to do that better across a huge number of people because you have to, really, you don't know when people are coming in. These types of movements are often a little bit more complex, but you have to really be able to have the gear and the space to get after these, and you have to have a more nuanced coach who can flow through a good session here and then have that pair with the thing that they're doing afterwards. Far more often is this back and forth where there's two things in the same session done incredibly incorrectly, where there's a whole bunch of stuff that is unrelated to the other bunch of stuff, and there's no warm-up time, there's no time for teaching, there's no real time for progression, and then there's like a thrown together, slappy, hit you in the face workout afterwards. Having an overall volume of a class, just too many things. And there are so many programs out there that are just like part A, part B, part C, part D, like every frickin' day. Can you do that well? It's possible to, but it's far more difficult than having a singular focus and just attacking that singular focus. And I would also argue that if you're doing both of these things, like a strength and then a Metcon every day, you're often never going towards true strength percentages. You never have enough time to do so, and your clients don't even know what those are. Now, could you make the argument that maybe you don't need to go towards heavier percentages, true threes, true fives, things like that? Sure, just touching a barbell is cool and it's gonna make you stronger, but you're not really taking strength seriously. You have to go to higher percentages, you have to give time to rest and recover in between sets to really get the stimulus there. So you're never taking strength very seriously, and you're also never taking metabolic conditioning very seriously, because in order to truly approach something like a 5-minute banger, you have to have so much going for you to really turn it on. Even like these 12-minute to 15-minute ones, like they shouldn't be mindless. They should be something where you put your head down and do work. How about a 45-minute hero workout? How do you fit that in with a lift in front of it? You don't. And I'm not saying that like you should be doing a ton of 45-minute hero workouts. I'm just saying, in order to have variance, we have to have different time domains, we have to have different lifts, we have to basically expose ourselves to many different things. Now, I posted the post I made just to get people to think, and I was intentionally vague with the post I made. I didn't say a barbell lift and a metabolic conditioning workout. I didn't say a strength plus a Metcon. I said a strength Metcon, which gave a lot of room for people's interpretation, because I wanted to start a conversation about it. I wanted some people to get mad. I wanted some people to hear it and go, I believe in that. And I wanted to have that conversation. And I got that conversation. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna record myself going through the comments. I'm gonna reply to the comments in this video, because we need to unpack some of these pieces. So let me open it up. Let me record my little screen here. Alrighty. So my post was, does your gym do CrossFit? CrossFit is constantly varied, functional movements executed at high intensity. Doing a strength Metcon every day is not varied. Does your gym do CrossFit? And I was saying, with that in mind, let me ask you again. So now this got a lot of attention, obviously, because it was intentionally inflammatory. So let's go into the comments. Let's respond to these one by one, because some of them had some great understanding here. So we'll go to newest first, and I'll reply to newest comments and then go from there. First comment, hello, DM sent, no, it's trash. Yep, since day one, CrossFit Caliber is doing CrossFit, cool. So Andy Craig Training says, there's a difference between a strength Metcon every day and doing a strength plus Metcon every day. While doing a strength Metcon every day could still be classified as CrossFit if programmed correctly. I think it's counterproductive, but I definitely think when programmed correctly, strength plus Metcon is still CrossFit. Depends on the strength and Metcon prescription. That's a great, well thought out thing. I totally agree, Andy. I think that there is a way to do a strength plus Metcon every single day that would be good and still considered CrossFit. And I think that that has to be done really, really nuanced. You're gonna have to really vary up what kind of strength you're talking about. There's gonna have to be a lot of skill work days, and those skill work days should really be very supportive of the Metcon that is there that day. So whatever lift is there should find itself in the Metcon. But then you also have to look at strength being things that are outside of just a barbell lift. It also has to be things like stonework. It also has to be things like, strongman stuff and heavy carries. But beyond that, it's also got to be things like gymnastic strength and strict muscle up work and handstand stuff. So strength, if you classify it as a broader definition and not just, just weightlifting, I think that can be done well. I think just weightlifting every day plus a Metcon, so weightlifting plus Metcon is a different statement than strength plus Metcon. So I think it's a well thought out post, and I'm there. Cool. CrossFit Rebel, high five. Mike, people, high five. Then Lefabulero said, I feel like every gym these days does CrossFit if you look at their advertising, sleds, kettlebells, etc. But let's be honest here, CrossFit gyms do CrossFit, and the others copy what they realize is most popular and effective. I think his statement is, or her, I don't, his statement is around, there's a lot of imitators to high intensity training because people see CrossFit and they assume that CrossFit is just high intensity HIIT training. But I think there's a nuance to CrossFit, being that we are not doing CrossFit for CrossFit's sake. We're doing CrossFit for the outcome that we get, which is fitness being a very specific thing. And I know someone commented about that, and it was one of my more favorite comments as we go further down. So we'll get there in a second. But I agree, there's a lot of people who copy what we do, but in all honesty, I'm stoked that people copy what we do, because more humans out there will have access to better training than has previously existed in our space. Like, do you know where we've come in the fitness world? We've come from people sitting on ellipticals and static stuff simply to form like biceps that they can look at in a mirror. Not from the elliptical, but more like the bodybuilding stuff, to where people are like doing far more functional movements, doing movements that not only apply to life, but have greater carryover into just being more capable. Like not just the way they look, but like even in like the most generic training, we're getting people doing like squats, even if they're garbage squats, and some sort of weightlifting. It's just entered the public psyche quite a bit more. And regardless of if it's CrossFit or not, that's cool. I like that. Jackie says CrossFit Linchpin does CrossFit, and yes, they do. They're awesome. Doing a strength every day is not varied. Love this. Yeah. And again, strength needs to be defined. So if we talk about strength as just a barbell lift, I would 100% agree. But even if it's like a different kind of strength every day, it is not varied. But there's enough variance there to where you might be able to consider a strength every day, if that strength is very varied, that you could find yourself calling that something like CrossFit. Now, here's fun. Zach Forrest, one of my good friends, who did our program for a very long time, our program being WooWo affiliate. Patrick, stop it. Constantly varied functional movements at high intensity does not speak to the format in which the prescription is presented. I can work my strength and conditioning, strength and Metcon every day and still be doing constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. And yes, you can, Zach, and that was my point. And the reason I made this vague was that it's possible to do. It's much harder to do. It's much more nuanced to do, and you really need to know your people. And strength has to be a much more varied definition than just a barbell lift, which is how it's often treated by people who don't understand it. They do their barbell lift and their other thing every day, and that ends up being far too much for most people and far too much exposure to just the barbell. So can it be done? It can, Zach. You're right. Fancy that. A level 1 staff member knows what he's talking about. And I said, bring it, Forrest. And then he said, fight me. Only point is it doesn't speak to volume performed in a given time frame. It's true. There is actually an article where Greg talks about, Glassman, the founder of this program, talks about doing a strength and a Metcon in the same day. But he talks about in the same day, not the same session. So often that's referencing 2-a-days, people who are able to come in and hit multiple sessions. Fitting it all into 1 hour, I think, is for normal people and for coaches who actually want to get in there and coach. If you're doing that on the regular, you're losing opportunities to coach, and you're overdoing it for most of the people who you're going through there. Again, unless you're doing it really nuanced and oftentimes erring on the side of too little when it comes to any sort of the strength components. But it also has to be a much more varied understanding of strength. I like how these guys ended up going back and forth through strength and Metcon plus strength Metcon. Again, the reason they were able to have this conversation about strength and Metcon or strength Metcon every day, strength Metcon being a Metcon that has strength built into it, is because I left the statement vague. And that statement being vague was by design. I wanted that conversation to happen. Zach ended up texting me after this and be like, which one are you talking about? And I was like, I left it vague on purpose. And then he said, smart girl, the line from, or clever girl, he said, the line from Jurassic Park. So he called me a raptor, which I appreciated. So I loved the thought process that went into it with Marky J and Zach, and they were talking about it. And I actually agree that with Marky J, that if you do a strength Metcon every day, that would most definitely not be true variance. And that wouldn't really be possible to do that well. You'd be doing the same types of workouts every day. So it's easier to have variance with a strength plus a Metcon than a strength Metcon every day, which is what his statement was saying there. And then John Keone, good old Big John, he said, lol, You just generalized varied term in what CrossFit does. Yeah, that was the point. Every gym is different. Some do CrossFit poorly, some do it exactly right. And I think CrossFit poorly is still better than 90% of programs out there, so I would agree with you. The post has some truth for those gyms that put a heavy bar in every workout. There you go, unpacking it more. And honestly, everyone conflates what daily CrossFitters should be going in for. Percentages and no member shows up really doesn't matter. The best owners and coaches keep tabs on when the member has been in and ensure they don't go too hard. Absolutely, John. And they also ensure that Monday through Friday does not conflict with other as far as movement pattern and load. Hell, best gyms don't even test a true max on any general population. And I said, yep. I think you can still test a true max, but it's not a true max. It's like a daily thing because true max would be like a ramp up to it, to like, exact percentages, to a rest time off to come back in, kind of like competition style. But I think still gyms do a good job of jumping in and testing that. And it's fun. I think it's fun to test what the body can do. But he's right. I think his comment was on point. So good job, John. Relentless Wilson, 7% of affiliates absolutely don't do CrossFit. I don't think that percentage is correct. But there is a lot of gyms that do versions that I would say stray away from variance and actually find themselves far more simplistic at a lot of times. I think a lot of gyms tend to find themselves copying competitor programs, which seems a little strange to me with most of your members not being competitors, but we'll talk about that, I think, in some later comments. The guy then followed up with saying, I say it's that high, not just based on CrossFit variance factor, but the recommended CD programming, Monday, Wednesday, monostructural weightlifting gymnastics. I'm guilty in my affiliate of never having programmed a gymnastics only day. Yeah, so what's cool is he recognizes he's guilty of that, and he might find its way in there to have a gymnastics only day. Now, there is a reality to the fact that we want people coming through our doors. And if we haven't built a culture around just accepting whatever's there and being excited about something like a gymnastics only day, and we don't have the coaching staff that can navigate that language, that would be something that could turn people off. And I understand why gyms might not do a gymnastics only day. But that being said, I think a gymnastics only day is super fun given the right context and firing people up enough. And if you have coaches who can kind of deliver that in a great way. But there is a reality that first and foremost, we need our members in the door. And I do recognize that and understand that. But I just think there can be a better balance because of what we're programming and how we're programming it and the types of variants that we have and how we communicate things to members. Greg's statement was, any program, no matter how complete, contains within its emissions parameters for which there will be no adaptation. The breadth of the adaptation directly correlates to the breadth of the stimulus. And basically what it's saying there is like, every program is going to have wonky things with it. Even the very best CrossFit program is going to have things like holes. And our goal is to just have the fewest amount of holes possible. So if you have a gymnastics only day, a single only gymnastics day isn't necessarily going to be the thing that takes your people to the next level. You can have gymnastics training days because they're not systemically fatiguing quite the same way as part of other sessions. So if you're having a strength metcon and the front end strength is gymnastics, like that's a day where you could argue that would be actually probably more appropriate for most people because more people would then come in, overall training volume across months and weeks would be higher. So it's like, if you're constantly doing gymnastics only days, it's different. But yeah, you're right. I would say gymnastics only days and monostructural only days are probably the two that you see the least done in affiliates because it's hardest to sell. That being said, I think they're, as Sean Pastuch pointed out, the number one most repeated workout on CrossFit.com is a 5K run because it's pretty essential to us as humans to be able to head that direction and do so, but it's also not something that a lot of us want to go to the gym and do. But creating an environment where people do want to do that and hyping them up for it and making it clever and fun and a lot of stuff around that and be able to run with their friends, I think it's a great thing to add in there. So all in all, I understand why it doesn't make it in, but I wouldn't say that 97% of affiliates don't do CrossFit. I think they just don't do gymnastics only days, which I think still falls into the line of CrossFit. 3 Sport Beaner. I don't think I can say that, but I'm going to say it because it's his name. Let me make sure you're still recording. I understand your point 100% and agree. If program is part A, part B is moving away from what we refer to as pure CrossFit GPP, the focus on wellness. Also, some gyms pack so much stuff into an hour, which results in less time for effective coaching and burnout. People want to partake in the sport of CrossFit, by all means train for your goals, but most of the population should just train the CrossFit philosophy, including, not limited to, nutrition and intensity are greater than volume, lift heavy once a week, and train 3 energy systems. Yeah, great comment. I think it's fantastic. I agree. I think too many people conflate the sport of CrossFit and what CrossFit athletes do who train like 3 hours a day with what you should do in a single session. And I think that continues to get covered further down. Coach Tyler said, great post. So Furious George, you said this confuses me. If I do a mix of Metcon, single modality work, and strength in my program, then I'm doing CrossFit. Yes, true, but not if you do it all in the same day, every day. And that's the main thing I wanted to point out, because CrossFit isn't just Metcons. CrossFit involves strength-only days, and CrossFit involves, monostructural days, and CrossFit involves gymnastics days, like we just spoke about a second ago. And he's saying, if I continue that and I also add an additional strength-specific work, then aren't I still doing CrossFit since I haven't stopped the first aspect of my training? Yeah, yes, but so if you're doing Metcons, single modality work, and strength, and those are all varied, and some days you're doing one, some days you're doing another, some days you're doing another, and then you add another strength on top of that, that's adding something additional. So that's and it can be done occasionally, but in some of those days that would mean you would then be doing a strength, because you're saying that you do with your strength in your program. But if you want to do extra strength, like, I'm not taking that away from you. I think if you are an individual who is in your garage, you have the time to do so, you can warm up properly, you have control over all your own volume, doing an extra strength workout because you love it, great. And you can and you're still doing CrossFit, but you're adding something to it, and that's okay. I'm not dissing that. What I'm having a conversation about is gyms that run this for normal people who walk through their doors that have a tight timeline, 1 hour. They've got to warm them up, teach them stuff, do some sort of a strength, oftentimes not a varied strength, but like a barbell lift, and then a metabolic conditioning workout afterwards. They fall into a pattern of doing this every day. It makes these less effective, these about the same time frame every day, just due to the nature of how long a class is. These warm-up pieces not having enough time to actually coach or learn, and then this piece not having enough time to take seriously to actually get much of a strength stimulus from it. So you're blunting everything. And I'm saying that every day is not CrossFit. So what you're saying here, yeah, you're still doing CrossFit, but you're also adding a little bit of strength in there beyond the strength that you're getting from CrossFit. And I would argue that strength that you're doing extra, if it makes you happy, do it. But I don't think it's going to actually make you stronger. I think you, by doing and focusing on intensity and consistency with the other stuff, would make you stronger in the long run over time than continuing to hit individual days where you add an extra little piece in there. But if it keeps you consistent and makes you happy, I'm okay with that. Like that, if it's consistency, then overall you're going to be right, and you need to be doing that. Anyway, there's a lot of nuance there. You're still doing CrossFit. It's okay. I hope that answered it for you. And I love this back and forth that Kevin 89 had with a few people, actually. Blair, Devil 230. Like, it looked like a cool back and forth. And this is kind of the post that I was trying. This is this type of thing that I wanted to have happen, is this back and forth that just like two people who they disagree to some degree, but they also are both trying to do the same thing, make people better, have people come to the gym, do things like that. And if anything, I hope it caused both of them to examine what they did and see whether or not it was the most effective thing for their people. And if Kevin does that and goes, this is the most effective thing, fantastic. That's what we were going for. But Blair had a great back and forth, super respectful. Same with Andy Craig coming in, talking percentages in a CrossFit gym are a recipe for disaster, in their humble opinion. And I agree with that, but sometimes that phrasing could lead someone like Kevin, who thinks I think he did take it, with all due respect, I know what I'm doing. Kind of sounds like they took it a little offensively, which is the risk you do with making such a statement like it's a disaster, even if you say, in my opinion, because it makes it sound like they're saying I'm a disaster, which I don't think that was the intention. But I also do like the statement of unless you're using a part A to build to a thing, take a percentage of that and use it for the workout. I like doing that. I think that's a great way to do it as well. It seems more appropriate for the day a lot of the time. I like the arm flex as they move in through there. The lifting Padre, this was one of my favorite ones. Then elite CrossFitters don't do CrossFit either, and there's 3 people who are like, yeah, that's right. It's like, wait a second, like you're conflating like an elite level sports athlete with the normal person who walks through the door, and it's like, no, man, totally different. Elite athletes do CrossFit. They also do other stuff, and they also train like 3 hours a day. So what I'm saying is our client who comes in and who needs to warm up, they need to learn stuff, they need to have a back and forth, they need to build community. In that 1 hour session every day, if you're doing a barbell lift and a Metcon, then you're not doing CrossFit because you're not varying things. Elite level athletes are also not who we should be comparing our normal athletes and our training methodologies off of. We should look to what they do as like, hey, that's cool, but also understand that they train for much longer periods of time. It's just a silly comparison, if you ask me. But it did make me laugh. And Marky J, they're not the standard for us normal people. Yeah, I do think that it does hurt the fitness industry and CrossFit gyms if we conflate their training to our training all the time. Wes, yep, Shaker Show. That's it. That's all I got. Let me stop this recording. Stop screen recording. All in all, I just wanted to say, like, I thought that was a fun post. I thought it made people think, and I left it intentionally vague. And the reason I left it intentionally vague was so that we would have this conversation. And I think we should always be examining it. And I failed to see the one comment that I saw when I was first going through this. I don't know where it is. Strength. But there was a comment that was great that was basically talking about, like, well, isn't the purpose of it to increase fitness? Like, that's what we're trying to do with CrossFit, is to increase fitness, and anything that gets us there is CrossFit. And the answer is yes. That is the best way to think, to be like, what is this program giving me? Is it giving me increase in fitness? Fitness being very specifically work capacity across broad time modal domains. Are they getting better everywhere across the board for eternity? That takes into account whether or not people are getting injured. That takes into account whether or not people are leaving because it's not fun. That takes into account everything. How much of any one thing should I add? Well, only as much as is going to increase work capacity across broad time modal domains. Now, that line of thinking is the way to go. Think everything we do to make that happen, let's make that happen. However, I think a lot of people have never given one workout a day a fair chance. One workout a day where people come in and focus on it, hit it really hard, put all their emphasis into learning and coaching on the front end, and then do a really hard workout. I think that by doing that as your starting thing and understanding that to be CrossFit, you have a much longer amount of longevity in you because you're doing less in any given day. There's far more time to learn, far more time to banter and chat, and you never end up overdoing it because you only have the single thing to focus on. I've tried doing the multiple things a day, and to balance that across a huge number of people, it ends up being quite exhausting, and it's hard to do really well. Are there people who do it really well? Absolutely. Are there many people who do it really poorly? Absolutely. But there's also people who do one workout a day poorly. All I'm saying, Foxy, I need you to turn that down. All I'm saying is that you need to examine what you're doing. And if you want to say, hey, what we do makes people more fit, great. But I urge you to actually look at those numbers, but before you jump and change and go to a strength Metcon every day, try just doing one workout a day, because that is how it was originally intended. And that was how it was written on CrossFit.com. And that's how I've seen people have the most amount of longevity, just because there's less overall opportunity for overdoing it. Remember, we're not trying to get people fit tomorrow. We're trying to get people fit for the rest of their lives. Can they do a cartwheel when they're 80? That's the focus we should be having. So if you want to say, but my way works, you also have to examine, did I try the other way? Did I try the other way? And I can tell you, I've tried the other way, and I've definitely not done it well, and I've done it better. But even when I was doing it better, I saw worse retention. That was just me. Maybe I was bad at that type of a program. Maybe I was bad at delivering that type of a program. But I know I'm good at coaching. I know I'm effective, and I know I'm quick. And I had a very hard time fitting multiple things in a single session and actually having meaningful change happen via my coaching. That's just me. Can you do it the other way? Sure. Strength is many things other than just a barbell lift. So I urge you, if you're doing a strength Metcon, categorize your strength as many different things and be varying that up as much as possible, and try to make sure that if you do that, it then pairs really well with the Metcon. and they are sequential and make sense. Good luck. It's not easy. I wish you the best.